Hello everyone, this is part 29 of What If Naruto Traveled Back in Time and Changed, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Naruto and Tsunade reported to Itachi's office the next morning as requested, and Itachi was amused to see that they were both hungover. Kurama was so hungover that he retreated into the seal when the sun stung his eyes. Chome was immune to most toxins, so she was just fine, but she wanted to be in on this conversation, so she was in the seal as well. Itachi looked up as they entered the office, and he pushed aside the papers he was working on. "Thank you for coming. Please take a look at this," Itachi said as he handed a scroll to Tsunade. Naruto looked over her shoulder and read it with her. Tsunade scoffed, "Itachi, you can't honestly be thinking about going to this. It's clearly a trap." Naruto agreed. Itachi sighed, "Yes, that is the common sentiment. The other Kage also got the invitation, and they said the same thing." Naruto aired an eyebrow, "So, why are you still thinking about going?" "Because they don't know how truly strong you are. This could be a chance for a decisive battle, but it all comes down to what you can do," Itachi answered while analyzing Naruto. Naruto closed his eyes and thought about it. He roused Kurama and Chome to see what they thought about it. After a minute, he opened his eyes and looked firmly at Itachi. "Well, the way I see it, Iwa is trying to drag us into the open. They requested that I be there, so it is clearly a trap, and they most likely believe that they have something ready for me." Itachi nodded, "I was thinking the same thing." Naruto put a hand to his chin in thought while Tsunade responded, "Itachi, I want them dealt with, but this would be willingly taking a fight on their terms. What if it wasn't on their terms? I know that they could turn this into a trap in any number of ways, but what if we weren't as isolated as they thought?" Naruto said, still thinking about this. "Explain." Itachi said, "Summoning seals. We get the elite from every ally and have them on standby. If things go pear-shaped, which is likely, then we summon in reinforcements." Naruto answered, still in a calculative tone. "Ruto, they have Iwa, Pain, Conan, the fake Madara, Kakazu, Kisame, Zetsu and all of the white Zetsus. That is an overwhelming force," Tsunade warned. Naruto nodded. "We took that white Zetsu body at the beginning of our training trip. We developed a countermeasure for his mimicking jutsu, and we will be able to identify him. Each Zetsu is only a low to mid Chunin skill level at best. The only thing they had over us last time around was the confusion they sowed in the ranks." Itachi had been included on the intelligence concerning the white Zetsu clones and it worried him greatly. "What is the counter we have?" Naruto answered, "I can cast a wide-scale jutsu that pollinates the air and they will react to it, which will disrupt any transformation they attempt. If that's not enough, any of my clones can identify them. Any decent Earth jutsu user can prevent them from traveling underground." "What about the ranks?" Tsunade asked. "Pain and Conan will come for me. That is the most likely. The Uchiha can't stand up to me at this point. Kisame is a non-issue, Kakazu is a threat, but I know how to deal with him. Zetsu is a scout and will just sow chaos," Naruto answered while still clearly thinking things through. "That still leaves 15,000 shinobi of and Iwa. Shinobi are religious zealots and Iwa is motivated by blind revenge," Itachi cautioned. "Iron Country is also closest to Iwa. They would be able to move their forces first," Tsunade added. Naruto sighed, "Look, it is clearly stacked against us. I have no doubts that I could stall and erect a barrier, but they can siege, flee or do any number of things. What is the worst case scenario, Naruto?" Itachi asked bluntly. "They have all of the Akatsuki there, they trap the tower, find a way to disable Mihiration, summon the Gedo Mazo, which would mean fighting against the 3 and 6 tails. Plus, they have Roshi. So, let's say the worst case scenario is 3 Biju, 4 S ranks, 2 SS ranks, 15,000 shinobi and 5 to 10,000 white Zetsu." Naruto answered in monotone. "We only have a week. If we don't accept, then they claim they will declare war. War would mean the involvement of innocents," Itachi added. "And Kinji would like to avoid that for obvious reasons. Naruto nodded. I understand that. Message the Kage and tell him to come here. We should talk this out with them. I will start thinking up strategies that could let us turn the tables. Okay, get with the Naris then. I will request a meeting for tomorrow morning. Itachi closed the meeting with that and set to the task of gathering his allies. After a long night poring over maps, plans, scenarios and many other things with Shikaku and Shikamaru, Naruto returned to his bed at 2 a.m. He snuggled into his girls and closed his eyes. The next day, he gave a basic breakdown to the Senju family, which included the Wave branch. Everyone was concerned, but Naruto said he would be back after the meeting with the Kage. Naruto and Tsunade walked into the council chambers, which had been rearranged with a circular table. Each Kage was allowed 3 advisors, bodyguards. This led to a full room with Raza, Gaara, Kankuro and Baki from Suna. Mei brought Ao, Chojuro and Zabuza with her from Kiri. I brought B, Yugito and Darui with him from Kumo. Yosuke brought Kaisa from Wave, which was allowed because Wave was a trade partner with Kumo and Kiri. From Konoha, there was Itachi, Shikaku, Tsunade and Naruto. Once everyone took their seats, Itachi began. Thank you for coming on such short notice. We have been working together for a short time and I know that the alliance is still young. I called you here today because this is a clear invitation from the Akatsuki for a decisive battle. I wanted to hear your thoughts and pitch some ideas at this meeting. Itachi began formally. I, ever the impulsive one when battle was involved, stood next. Kumo stands ready to take the fight to the Akatsuki. Mei stood next. My nation is still recovering from our prolonged civil war. I am hesitant to engage in such a war, especially when my Biju have already been taken. Raza stood up. Lady Mizukage, I understand why you are hesitant, but this isn't the kind of threat the world can ignore. Before anyone else could speak, Naruto stood and looked calmly around the room. After a couple moments, he spoke. I have worked with each of you, and I have grown to cherish the bonds I have with you. I have not shared what I am about to share with many people, but I believe it necessary at this point so that you may understand the gravity of the situation. Naruto took a deep breath and Tsunade placed a calming hand on his shoulder. This is not my first life. This war with the Akatsuki led to the end of all life in the world last time around. Naruto held up his hands to stifle the incredulous protests. I am going to enter Sage mode. I ask that anything I share with you is kept in this room. I do not need the whole world knowing this information. A stunned silence followed Naruto's words, but it was Raza's chuckles that broke everyone from the disbelief. He was shaking his head and his chuckling was breaking into full fits of laughter. Everyone waited for him to let them in on the joke. Raza recomposed himself and stood up. I apologize, fellow Kage. It all makes so much sense now. For those that don't know, Naruto came to Suna when he was still 5 years old. He altered Gaara's seal and began helping my people through creative use of seals. It was always difficult for me to swallow that a child could make such an impact on my nation. That was why I was laughing. I grunted. So, that is how you knew so much. Naruto nodded. Mei turned her head. Could you please explain more? Naruto nodded slowly. Please close your eyes and open your minds to me. I am going to enter my sage mode to share some relevant information. He waited until he felt the tensions in the room ease, and he embraced the silence that fell over the room. Naruto clapped his hands together and closed his eyes. He flashed into GSM and shared visions of the Fourth Great Shinobi War. He shared visions of his fight with Madara and Obito and the Shinju tree. He shared the resurrection of Kaguya and the intense fight that followed. He shared visions of the Juubi and the destruction it wrought. Then, he ended with his last memory of him tied on a cross and the Juubi laying waste to the world. Jaws were dropped, eyes were popping, and a gobsmacked silence hung in the room. I shared these specific memories because I don't want to get into what I should and shouldn't have changed. I wanted you to know what we are up against. I wanted you to know what was at stake. Naruto began. Itachi, who was more familiar with Naruto's past, spoke up. Fellow Kage, if we leave such an enemy to stew in the shadows, then we will surely come to regret it. My strategist worked with Naruto to come up with a plan for this summit, if Akatsuki, Iwa and Am should make their move. I snapped out of it and looked between Naruto and Itachi. I trust your power, brat. I don't know about stepping into such a trap though. Naruto nodded. I can understand that. To be honest, I have my reservations as well. Then why do we let them choose the battleground? May asked what was on many minds. To minimize collateral damage. Naruto answered. Raza frowned but nodded. Yes, if we do not take this shot, then it is likely that our civilian populations will be affected. That would have many downstream effects. I punched a hand into his palm. Let's hear what you have come up with and we will make our decision from there. Shikaku Nara rose and bowed to the Kage. We only had one night to plan, so there are probably some kinks we could iron out in this plan. To start, we would all teleport to Kumogakure and we would move down to the summit together. That would, or at least should, prevent any ambushes en route to the summit. Won't that put Iwa even more on edge? May pointed out in question form. They are already our enemies. We have confirmed that Akatsuki is directing Iwa. What you don't know is that it was a member of the Akatsuki that broke into our political prison and rescued the Tsuchikage's daughter. That is why we have disabled all spatial jutsus in our village with our barrier core. Itachi chimed in. I growled, well, I think we are beyond the point of settling this with talks. Part of me doesn't blame them after what Naruto did to their Jinchuriki and Kage, but still. If the Akatsuki is inviting us to a fight, I will take it. That being said, what is the next part of your plan? Naruto stepped up, since he was the Fuinjutsu master. Next, we have our elite squads on standby for reverse summoning. I modeled it after the summoning contracts of the animal clans, and we can instantly bring our forces in to join us. It is likely that the Rinnegan wielder will be there, and it will be my job to deal with him. I would say that I am enough to deal with Conan and Pain, but it will be a fight for sure. Raza sighed. Ruto, why put yourself in such a fight? You are their main objective, along with the other Jinchuriki, why not leave that fight to the Kage? Because I know the Rinnegan's abilities, and I bested him once before when I was far weaker than I am now. We contemplated that, but then we would be missing some of our strongest shinobi when countering the vast number of enemies we expect. Naruto answered. I snarled, okay, then where did you plan for the Kage to fight? Naruto nodded at that. I want you to take on Kisame Hoshigaki. You are king in single combat, and I have disabled his sword Samehada. Your lightning will counter his water jutsu and he shouldn't be able to keep up with your speed. Raza, Gaara, Killer Bee, Mei and Yugito will be on crowd control. You will hold the enemy back until our reinforcements arrive. Mei asked another tentative question. Naruto, why would we just bring in a portion of our forces? Even if we have them vastly outclassed in quality, those numbers would make it nearly impossible to deal with our enemy. Shikaku addressed that question. That is why we will mobilize our forces and quietly move them to our borders near Iron Country. We have our elites hold out until our main forces can pincer them. Itachi pitched in here. The most difficult part of this task would be mobilizing without the Akatsuki catching wind. I recommend sending more squads than usual out on border patrol and issuing quiet order to the squad captains. They have an effective information network, and we don't want them to know until it is too late. This whole plan is based on them thinking that they have the upper hand. Raza groaned, which earned attention from the council. If we do this, won't that eliminate our relationships with Mifune? We all get most of our chakra metal from Iron Country. Naruto fielded this one. I think that Mifune is probably under Akatsuki's control. I will be able to sense that when I am near him, and I should be able to break that control. That being said, I don't know what other traps they would have prepared. For that reason, I recommend we all send shadow clones into the meeting until the building itself is clear. I grunted. Naruto, that is a Konoha jutsu. We don't know it. Naruto pulled several copies of the jutsu scroll out of his pocket. I presume elite shinobi will be able to master this jutsu within a week. Naruto put extra emphasis on the ed eyebrow he shot at I chuckled and snatched the scroll up. Very well. Naruto handed out the scrolls and continued his plan. Alright, so, we set up in the hotel for the first night. We set up privacy barriers on our hotel rooms and I will equip them with chakra screens. We send our clones into the meeting and if they notice anything off, then they can dispel and inform us. How would we know about the trap if they dispel? Mei asked. Naruto chuckled, because this jutsu is the key to my strength. There is a memory transfer component to the jutsu, and any non-physical memory will be transferred to the original when dispelled. Before you go overboard, I recommend reading the cautions and potential side effects before you perform the jutsu. Everyone took a moment to think about the potential of such jutsu before they snapped back into professional mode. Kage stood up. What part would you have wave play in this? Tsunade intervened. We do not need your forces. We will need you to prepare your ports, and if war breaks out, then we will need a transport hub. Kage nodded. It will be done. The people of Wave stand behind the alliance. I let out a pleased sigh. That will help in troop movements. Lord Nara, if we fail to eliminate the Akatsuki in this battle, what is your projected outcome? Shikaku sighed and mumbled troublesome under his breath. He then looked up and addressed the council. I don't think the Akatsuki will go all in here. I think they will absolutely try to hit and cripple us. That being said, if they fail and are able to retreat, then they would get desperate. We couldn't begin to plan out worst-case scenarios, but we did come to one conclusion. Shikaku paused here and looked at Naruto, who gave him a nod. If we fail to eliminate the Zetsu, then they could easily begin targeting smaller villages and civilian populations. With their transformation abilities, that could go wrong in any number of ways. This earned rumblings around the table for the first time during the meeting, but it was May that took charge for the first time rather than questioning things. That won't be a problem. If the worst case happens, we inform the daimyo immediately and they can pull the civilians into the capitals. Naruto could set up protective barriers and screening seals around the capitals. That would be a short-term solution. Raza nodded. That will be easy in my country. Suna is already protected by those seals and your hidden villages already have the basic versions. Honestly, if it comes to that, then we unite the whole world, even the civilian populations, against the Akatsuki. I barked out a laugh. Yeah. Well, if you asked me if 4 of the Great 5 would ever work together in my lifetime, then I would have laughed you out of my tower. They have united us against a common enemy and evidently behind the man that was chosen by Kami. So, bring it on. I rose to his feet and smashed his fists together. That night, at the Senju compound, Naruto let everyone know what the plan was. Of course, his girls insisted on being part of the fight. Naruto didn't want this, but he couldn't refuse them. They were each among the strongest in Konoha and they were equally as stubborn. That being said, Yami was assigned guard duty, Rias, Hikari and Shin were on kid duty and the rest of the Senju family was getting ready to kick some ass. Iron Country, Gokage Summit. Itachi, May, Iron Raza led their contingents through Lightning Country to the port and across the seas to Iron Country. It was a couple hours by ship and the entourage of 4 nations was tense as they endured the journey across the seas. Naruto was checking and rechecking the pre-prepared seals he had, which include 4 of the reverse summoning seals that could each bring in 50 shinobi. He also had strong barrier tags that he would give out to the people that were assigned to hold down the fallback location. He had overstocked on stasis seals, explosive tags and he had some blank tags ready for him to adapt on the fly. For the rest of the journey, Naruto was in his golden sage mode, and he was feeling out his surroundings. He was more in tune with the ocean and water domains, but his range was significantly reduced on the seas. When he had time, he really needed to spend time on the ocean to master this domain, but that was for another time. As he meditated on the prow of the ship, Gaara, Raza and Tsunade showed up. Tsunade placed a comforting hand on his shoulder and spoke softly. Relax, Ruto. You are not in this alone and this is not on your shoulders alone. Naruto cracked his eyes open, and his hand slid over Tsunade's own and gave it a soft squeeze. The tingle of the potent natural energy resonated and crackled against Tsunade's skin before Naruto replied. I know, Mama, but these are all some of the most important people in my life and they are risking their lives to follow my plan. Tsunade offered a sad smile to Naruto. I know, kiddo. For what it is worth, I trust you. I trust you as well, brother. Gaara added in a softer tone. Same here, Bubba. If I die tomorrow, I will die a happy man knowing that my family and Suna are in good hands. Raza contributed. Naruto rose to his feet faster than most could process, and dope slapped Raza. When the Kazekage shot an incredulous look at Naruto, he exclaimed. No. Knowing death flags. You idiot, tempting fate like some dumbass. This caused Tsunade to bark out a laugh and Gaara chuckled at the sheepish look on his father's face. Gaara took control of the conversation. Father, the prosthetic is new, are you sure it is wise to put yourself in the battle? This drew attentive looks from Tsunade and Naruto. Raza sighed, I am not going to lie to you, I am not at 100%. That being said, I am more than enough to deal with your average shinobi or plant creature. Gaara put a hand on his father's shoulder, I will be there with you. Plus, sister will join us, and it will get steamy. Naruto guffawed at that. Did Gaara just make a joke? Oh, Kami, that was rich. That being said, just make sure to stand behind her when you see her fan glow blue. Tsunade smiled at seeing Naruto's tension broken. She wrapped him in a hug and Naruto whispered in her ear. Mama, I can feel it. Congratulations. That being said, don't do anything stupid or Q will lose it and I don't know if I would be able to stop him. Tsunade snuggled into the hug, I knew you would feel it. Can you let him out so I can share the good news? That night, the Kage were escorted by Iron Samurai from the port and into Iron Country's capital, which was near the fort they would be meeting at. Naruto spread his senses and he was not surprised to feel Iwa was in an inn across the village and he felt at least 50 of them in that hotel. Those numbers wouldn't pose a threat to anyone he brought with. Spreading his senses, he looked around Iron Country and was happy to say that he couldn't feel any reinforcements in the area. He slept lightly and kept his senses about him. He felt as if he were in the belly of the beast and the peaceful country he fell asleep to last night now had a tension hanging in the air. Due to this, Naruto was up at 4 a.m. and he cleared his mind to feel out the country once more. He trusted his instincts, he trusted his connection to nature and nature felt like there was a dense static in the air. This feeling made it nearly impossible for Naruto to ease his nerves and he needed to figure out what was causing it. As he entered GSM, he checked on his allies around the village and they were still resting peacefully, except for the Kage. He could feel that they were awake now and preparing themselves. He spread his senses and checked on the Iwa and Am contingents in the other inn. Oh, that was new, Am was here now. That took the total of hostile signatures from 50 to 75. Putting the nearby enemies aside, he spread his chakra through the air and ground. He felt hundreds of samurai that were patrolling the area. He felt their tension and he knew that any experienced warrior would be able to feel battle coming. While Naruto couldn't detect an actual enemy presence within the borders of Iron Country, that didn't mean the situation couldn't change. The border between Iwa and Iron Country was less than 50 miles. The border of Am was 85 miles. That meant that during the meeting, this could change rapidly. The allied Kage met in the restaurant that was within the inn and conducted their morning meeting. Everyone's eyes were hardened and steeled. They each knew something wasn't right and after Naruto set up the privacy barrier, it didn't take long for them to voice their thoughts. Naruto, this is definitely a trap. Tension in the air this morning is thicker than at any point during the Third Great War. I growled. Raza nodded, indeed, it is quite menacing. I sensed throughout Iron Country, and I couldn't feel any shinobi within the borders. That being said, there are ways around my sensing, there are transportation techniques, barrier techniques and any other number of possibilities. Naruto said wearily. The one thing I can say for sure is that the natural energy feels off, like the earth knows something big is coming. I chuckled abruptly, if I didn't know you, I would have said that you were spouting nonsense. That being said, if you feel that way, then there is no doubt that this is an ambush. Itachi nodded, indeed, I think we go with the clone plan. We cannot let them continue to dictate terms. We should also set up the summoning seals. Pretty much everyone agrees that a fight is coming. While our clones are in the meeting, we should set the stage for battle. Mei said in a tone she hadn't used since the Bloodline Wars. Raza seconded that motion, I agree. Gloves are off and there is no need to play fair anymore. Naruto stepped in here, okay, well, let's get the clones out. I will place chakra masking seals on them, make sure that they are dressed in real clothes. Naruto had explained that this was to prevent too much suspicion since he knew that shadow clones could be detected by doujutsu or people that knew what they were looking for. The seals he developed would make it impossible to distinguish between real and clone. I growled, if we all agree that a fight is coming, then why don't we just throw the first punch? Because we are in Iron Country, Lord Rakage. If we attack without provocation, then the fault will fall on us. Itachi said calmly. I grunted and Mei spoke up, I agree with Itachi. This is the best way to go about it. Plus, the fact that Mifune didn't greet us in person tells me that something is wrong. Naruto stepped in here. I didn't want to add to things, but that is a massive red flag. I remember Mifune and he would never let leaders into his village without greeting them in person. I suspect he is under the Akatsuki's control. Itachi, do you have a way to break someone afflicted by the Koto Amatsukami? Itachi shook his head in the negative. I cannot, however, my mother and Shisui can. If things spiral out of control, we can incapacitate Mifune and we will free him of the influence later. Once he returns to his senses, he will undoubtedly side with us. Naruto clicked his teeth before locking eyes with each Kage around the table. Alright, clones out, eyes up and stay sharp. This inn is a safe zone, everything outside is hostile. If clones get dispelled, we will move to the port and put the sea at our back. I will Hiraishin Darui, Chojuro and Kankuro back to the ship. We will quietly take over the port and set up the summoning seals. The rest will remain here and wait for the memories of the clones. As everyone departed, Naruto joined the Konoha group in Itachi's room. They created the clones, gave them their clothing and placed the masking seals on them. Naruto went to the other rooms to place the masking seals and within 30 minutes, the clones were off to meet for the Gokage summit. Naruto had a clone flash the assigned people to the port and his clones set up the summoning seals and the fallback barrier seals. With the clones, who will just be referred to as their originals' names, they were escorted by 2 squads of samurai toward a fort that rested in the center of 3 mountains that were shaped like wolf heads. The landscape was covered in snow and the wind blew the loose snow around with impunity, which made for a very chilly walk. That being said, the clone group walked silently with each clone playing its part. As they entered the fort, they were greeted by Mifune and a samurai contingent. Since Naruto couldn't feel anything off without going into sage mode, he couldn't determine when Mifune was being controlled. That was a variable that could really complicate things. Despite that, the group made their way into the meeting room and took their seats. The clones placed their Kage hats down on the table and noticed that there were seats for Iwa and Am. That sent shivers up everyone's spine because Am wasn't announced on the guest list, which was already a violation of the terms for the summit. After 10 minutes, Kitsuki walked in flanked by Kuretsuki and a golem guard. Another 5 minutes and Naruto's hackles rose when the Diva Path of Pain walked in and took his seat next to Kitsuki. The Diva Path, with the Rinnegan active, locked eyes with Naruto. The message conveyed was simple: today we will see whose path to peace is the right one. Naruto could sense the determination and firm resolve of Nagato through his Yahiko path, which made him lament the stubborn stupidity of his cousin. Once the Kage were each sat down, Mifune rose and began the meeting. Honorable Kage, we are meeting here today in an effort to prevent war. I am Mifune, Samurai Head General of Iron Country, and I will be the impartial mediator of these discussions. Mifune said in his gruff and wizened tone. I growled, Lord Mifune, there has already been a breach of contract and etiquette. Am was not on the guest list that was extended to Kumo, Kiri, Suna or Konoha. I demand an explanation. Mifune coughed and cleared his throat. Well, you have brought your allies and Iwa convinced me that it would only be fair if they brought their ally. Surely you jest, Lord Mifune. Am is the home of the Akatsuki and that man sitting there is the figurehead of that organization. Said organization has attacked my village and has already stolen Biju from Kiri. Raza said in a disciplined monotone. Before Mifune could address those charges, Kitsuki spoke up while Pain watched on placidly. And Konoha, your ally, is responsible for the death of the previous Tsuchikage and our Jinchuriki after he unjustly captured my daughter. Naruto couldn't maintain decorum and he, or well, his clone, broke out laughing. Oh, ha ha ha, that is rich. That is the angle you're going with. Oh, that's great. Naruto stopped laughing abruptly and scowled at Kitsuki and no Kage made an effort to stop him. I sniffed out your invasion and took measures to halt it. I spared your daughter when I could have ripped her apart just as easily as I did Han and Onoki. You are a pitiful man with no honor. Kitsuki growled and rose to his feet while Kuretsuki stood to his side. Do not dare speak to me, demon. This earned every other Kage, except Pain, standing to their feet in response. The tension in the room was electric like a room filled with gasoline and everyone was holding their own match. Pain began chuckling darkly, this is why humans are not fit to rule over themselves. It takes someone with the will of God to rule over humanity. If you do not wish to die, sit down. Pain ended forcefully. This once again prompted Naruto's clone to laugh. Ha ha ha. Oh, come on, Pain. Don't make me out you to everyone here. I tell you what, if you are God, then deactivate your Rinnegan. If you can activate and deactivate your vaunted eyes at will, then I will call you God. This earned confusion from everyone, even his allies. He had shared details with them, but he hadn't shared everything because he was still holding on to hope that he could save his cousin once all of this nonsense was over. He was so close last time around and he wasn't going to let it end in the same way. Pain, through Yahiko's body, scowled at Naruto. These are God's eyes. They cannot be deactivated. This comment earned a scoff and a mutter of, under Naruto's breath that was loud and clear enough for all to hear. Mifune coughed, we are getting off topic. Since it were called this summit, I will allow Kitsuki to open negotiations and state his demands. Kitsuki stood with a smirk on his face, and he formed hand signs that sent shimmers around the wall of the room. Well, I have closed off this space. Your Haration will no longer work, demon. I demand that Naruto Senju Uzumaki be handed over to Iwa in recompense for his crimes against Iwa. This is non-negotiable. Failure to agree to these terms will result in your immediate deaths. Kitsuki was stumped when all of the Kage started laughing, with Naruto laughing louder than all of them combined. Itachi's clone, with a devilish smirk on its face, stood up and addressed that. We unequivocally decline. If you want war, bring it on. While Kitsuki scowled, Pain rose from his seat. If you defy the will of God, Pain held out his hands and aimed them to both sides of the table. Then you will die. The clones of the Kage and their bodyguards just sat back in their seats. Well, Lord Mifune, are you just going to let this happen? May asked. Mifune shook his head and squinted his eyes before he addressed the room. Yes, the demands of Iwa are just. Naruto's clone flashed into sage mode and stepped forward. Pain, this fight is between you and me. If you want me, come to the middle wolf head. Oh, and Zetsu, why don't you come out and say hello before I skewer you with nature again? Evidently, it wasn't time for the plant creature to make its move yet and it stayed within the floor. Pain was confused. Why were they acting so relaxed? Something was wrong and his senses were blaring warning alarms. No, you will come with me now or they will all die here. Naruto scoffed at that and slapped his hands to his cheeks in mock surprise. Oh no, come off it, Pain. Why not drop the pretenses? Why don't you spring your trap and watch me walk right through it? Why don't you bring out your reinforcements and we will have it out? Naruto was walking calmly towards Pain as he spoke, which caused the Iwa and Am groups to step forward. Strangely, the Kage were just sitting and watching. Drop the act, demon. Kuretsuki yelled. You cannot get out of this room. Naruto chuckled before locking eyes with Kuretsuki, which made her step behind her father. Tell me, Yahiko, Kitsuki and others, what happens when rampant nature energy is released in a closed space? At that moment, a Zetsu clone, which had integrated with the table, was pushed out of the table with a spike of wood through its chest. It immediately began turning into a tree and that tree sprouted leaves and flowers. You wouldn't kill your Kage to kill us. Kitsuki shouted. Every Kage started laughing and now the Iwa contingent was panicking. Pain stepped forward and placed his hands on Kitsuki and Kuretsuki's shoulders as wooden stakes launched at the group. Pain held up one palm and called out, Universal push. The force of the jutsu shattered the walls of the room and everything in it in the direction of the attack. Through the colossal damage to the room, nobody noticed the puffs of smoke and only Naruto's wood clone remained standing when the smoke cleared. Middle head, Pain. We will settle our differences there. Naruto said firmly before launching an attack on the three. Unfortunately, the Diva Path was more than capable of dealing with a single wood clone and Kitsuki was able to defend himself. The clone put up a brief, but intense fight and it went out with a bang, but that was all it could do in the end. The clone explosion technique blew off the rest of the top of the tower that Pain hadn't already destroyed, and it was only due to Pain blowing the explosion away that the Iwa contingent and Mifune survived. As the dust settled around them, the Diva Path turned to Kitsuki. Gather your forces and do not let the Kage escape. My animal path has seen and moved to the port. Kitsuki bowed. As you wish, Lord Pain, will you join us in our assault? Pain looked off into the distance at the middle wolf head. No, Conan and I will collect the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Without him, the alliance will fail. I leave the Kage and their entourages to you. At that moment, Zetsu appeared with its white and black half together. Lord Pain, Am's and Iwa's forces have reached the Iron Country border. My clone's memories made it seem like things didn't go according to plan. The black half said in a disappointed tone. Pain looked placidly at Zetsu. They knew it was a trap and it seems like they each sent clones. Regardless, they will not get away. My jutsu holds strong over Iron Country and the Kyuubi Jinchuriki cannot escape. Kitsuki and Kuretsuki exchanged concerned looks. Lord Pain, I mean no offense, but are you sure you can defeat the demon brat? Pain's brows furrowed and emotion showed on Yahiko's face for the first time. I am God. You do not question your God, mortal. While Kitsuki and Kuretsuki were bowing, Pain's dive path disappeared in a puff of smoke. Black Zetsu grinned darkly. Well, you three, get to the ports and secure the Ichibi, Nibi and Hachibi Jinchuriki. Your forces will arrive in 15 minutes. Middle mountain of the Three Wolf Heads formation. The dive path of Pain appeared in a puff of smoke at the head of the formation of his paths. Conan was floating on a paper bird behind the bird summon of the animal path that was carrying all of paths. The group flew over Naruto, who was already in his golden sage mode as he sat on the peak of the mountain in a lotus position. As the diva path appeared, Naruto stood up, opened his eyes and fixed his golden orbs on Pain. Now that we are all here, do you have anything to say before I destroy your paths, Nagato? Naruto's calm voice carried through the air as the winds in the thin mountain air grew turbulent. Diva spoke for the group, as was the usual. Kyuubi. Naruto interrupted him with a potent flare of chakra. Cousin, we have been over this. Each time you refer to me as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki will cost you one of your paths. I gave you a warning and 3 years to see the light. I have held out hope that it wasn't too late to save one of the last family members that is alive. Be warned, Nagato, that I have great patience, but it is not infinite. Naruto's tone had deepened into a growl and the soft utterance still carried itself to each path's ears. The paths didn't react, but Conan did. Diva spoke once more. Naruto Uzumaki, if you surrender and come with me, I will revive you after the Kyuubi is extracted, on behalf of our family ties. That is my final offer. Naruto started laughing ominously before he fixed a glare that nearly froze the 6 paths of Pain. No, Nagato, this is your final offer. Listen to reason, join my cause or I offer you no mercy. I will destroy each one of your paths before I travel to your real body and beat the ever-living shit out of you. Pain visibly stiffened at the threat. Very well, Naruto, it seems we are at an impasse. It is time for me to show you that a mere mortal cannot defy the will of God. Naruto bit back his retort and created a wood wall that blocked the wave of gravitational force that was shot at him. He flipped backwards and dodged the beak of the massive bird summon the Pains were riding and he engaged in a fight versus the Diva, Asura, Preta and human paths. Naruto sent a series of wind blades out of each of his hands as he flipped backwards and dodged the coordinated assault. After the human path lost one of its hands, the Preta path stepped forward and absorbed the chakra of the jutsu. Naruto, remember, these frontliners aren't your first targets. You need to get rid of the Naraka path first so they can't be revived. Stick to the plan, Ruto. Kyuubi roared from within the mindscape as he meditated next to Chomei. The two were working on syncing their chakra so that they could boost Naruto's power simultaneously. Ruto, use my scale powder to create the opening. Chomei said excitedly as her chakra entwined with Kurama's. After dodging a volley of rockets and blades from the Asura path, Naruto had to erect a 20-foot thick earth barrier that blocked the gravitational wave from Diva's hands. 1. Naruto counted in his head as his barrier shattered in a cloud of dusty earth. 2. Naruto counted as he gathered the chakra before breathing out a wave of vibrant yellow orangish powder of his mouth that encompassed the whole peak of the Middle Wolf Mountain. 3. Naruto's internal counter continued as he formed the hand sign to ignite the scale powder. 4. I am sorry, Nagato, this is going to hurt. The whole mountain erupted in the brightest chakra flash that illuminated the whole ground and sky around Iron Country. Even though Naruto had erected multiple layers of chakra over his eyes and had them closes, his vision was still blurry with multiple rings of light. It was as if he had a staring contest with a flashbang grenade and it went off after 5 minutes of staring right at it. Naruto removed the focus on his vision by keeping his eyes closed and used his senjutsu chakra to feel out the paths. He felt the stunned and irritated chakra of pain as it linked him to his paths, and he sensed that Conan had her bird rise into the sky as she was unable to see a thing. Naruto sensed two of the dead feeling bodies about 50 meters away, and he formed a Raisin Shuriken in his right hand and disappeared in a shunshin towards what he believed was the Naraka path. Pain had been pleased that his paths had the advantage in the fight thus far, and the boy was being forced to fight completely defensively. After his Diva Path's second use of the Shinra Tensei, or Universal Push, he was intrigued by the massive cloud of powder. He hadn't seen this jutsu from the boy's scouting report, so he gathered his assault paths behind the Preta path and prepared to counter the jutsu. Even from his perch miles away, his actual Rinnegan was blinded by the vibrant chakra flash. He cursed and ordered the Diva Path to blindly unleash a full-powered Shinra Tensei to thwart his opponent's plan. Naruto appeared next to the Naraka path after using a flash step, a faster and more disorienting, at least for those unused to its effects, version of the shunshin. He dropped the intense wind-coated chakra sphere next to the Naraka path and flash stepped away to a location that was further away from the assault paths. As he exited the second flash step, two things occurred nearly simultaneously. First, his Raisin Shuriken went off and the Naraka path was shredded by millions of microscopic wind blades that acted like a wind blender on steroids for anything that was caught in its blast area. Second, the Diva path launched a 360-degree Shinra Tensei that completely obliterated the mountain peak. Naruto recovered from the flash step, and he didn't have time to fasten himself to the mountain or to block the massive gravitational force that slammed into his body. While he was ragdolling through the air, he idly thought that particular attack hurt much more last time around. That didn't stop him from sailing through the air and crashing into the Western Wolf Mountain. As he pulled himself out of the crater and dusted the rubble off of his combat uniform, Naruto focused his senses and was pleased to say that his attack had worked on the Naraka path, and he didn't have to worry about reanimating enemies anymore. Nagato scowled as his eyes burning with vibrant white and yellow rings from the blinding attack. He let out a roar of pain and frustration when he felt the link to his Naraka path severed. His use of a full-powered Shinra Tensei had him huffing and puffing, and the eyes of his paths were still useless at this point in time. That being said, the Preta path could feel the potent chakra of the boy, and that feeling guided the paths to turn toward their opponent. The animal path had used its bird summon to absorb the impact of the Shinra Tensei, and it was falling through the air when it summoned a massive rhino and a three-headed dog. The two summons were falling directly on top of the Jinchuriki, and the fresh Rinnegan eyes of the summons provided a way for Pain to see clearly once more. That enabled his paths to jump toward Naruto's new location in an attempt to save the animal path. Naruto sensed everything happening in slow motion, and he was hardly surprised by the summoning of the two creatures that were mere meters from crushing him and his new mountain. Naruto weaved through hand signs and focused his chakra before he crouched and placed both of his hands on the ground. 10 massive wooden spikes rose from the earth and raced into the sky towards the animal summons. The rhino was the first to roar out in pain as 3 of the wooden spikes impaled it. Next, the dog was impaled through its center head and 3 times in its legs and body. Naruto smirked devilishly as he switched to the snake hand seal and directed more of his nearly sentient chakra through the earth and into the wooden spikes. Before they could dispel, the animal summons erupted in an explosion of gore as the wooden stakes sprouted massive thorns that tore through nearly every part of their body. As the blood was falling, Naruto focused on the milliseconds he had to target the isolated animal path. The path had landed on the back of the dog's summon, and it had jumped into the air towards the other paths when he had cast his Mokuton, Grand Wooden Spikes Jutsu. As the animal path soared through the air in an attempt to link up with the other paths, it summoned another of the bird summons it had at its disposal. As the animal path secured itself to the bird, its head turned to see something godly. A fist the size of a mountain made of wind that was translucent, except for the potent bluish sheen that indicated copious amounts of wind chakra, was soaring towards the animal path. The bird tried to climb above the jutsu's area of effect, but it wouldn't make it out in time. The Preta path jumped forward off of a platform created by the airborne Asura path in an attempt to save the animal path. The Preta path kept its hands forward to absorb the jutsu that was racing it toward the animal path. The Preta path was mere feet away when the effect of the divine fist of the wind god slammed into the animal path and the bird it was riding. The Preta path was able to absorb the local chakra that slammed into its palms, but it was unable to save the animal path. Diva path was able to see the shattered form of the animal path as it ragdolled over the mountains and into the far-off horizon. Pain screamed out in anger as his connection to the animal path was severed. Through the eyes of his paths, that could now see clearly, he saw that the animal path looked like it was slammed head-on by a freight train and subsequently crushed by a tank. He knew there was no hope in recovering the body of the animal path, much less reviving it by using the Naraka path. Pain was panicking now as his battle strength dwindled as his cousin dissected him in a precise and planned manner. Battle at Tetsu Port. Naruto's clone had erected the summoning seals and helped to prepare a fallback point for the allied forces. The tension in the air had reached a fever pitch and everyone was working frantically to prepare the area for defense. It didn't help that a platoon of samurai had attempted to prevent them from completing their assigned tasks, which was a 10-minute delay that nobody appreciated. As the bound samurai were secured upon the Kumo ship that had transported them, everyone heard a far-off explosion and saw dust rising from the skies over the fort that the Kage's clones were meeting at. Moments later, Naruto's clone announced that the Kages and the remaining protective detail were en route to the port. It also said that the original Naruto was going to fight Pain away from the main battle and that Iwa and Am forces were inbound. The clone sat in a meditative position and called on the natural energy around the port. Its eyes snapped open when it was able to get an accurate reading and it gathered those assigned to set up the fallback point. Okay, everyone, Kages will be here in 10. Iwa and Am forces in the village are pursuing them. The main Iwa and Am forces are 20 minutes out and I can sense thousands of Zetsu transporting through the ground. This is scenario 3 and we will need to hold out for a minimum of an hour before our own reinforcements make it here. The Naruto clone tried to keep its tone calm as it informed those gathered around. Darui took charge, set up an ambush for those that are pursuing the Kage. Chojuro, summon our quick reaction teams and get them caught up on the situation. Clone Naruto, prepare and power the barriers. We will need them to delay the enemy. Naruto's clone spoke up. Okay, to make bad news worse, the Uchiha, Kakazu and Kisame have entered the fray and they have attacked the Kage en route. It furrowed its eyes in concentration to feel out the newly emerged battle. I is fighting Kisame and guiding him to our western edge. Tsunade is fighting against Kakazu. The clone winced as everyone heard an explosion. Well, Mama isn't holding back. She is already in sage mode and is engaging Kakazu while falling back further west of the breakage. Kankuro whistled as he summoned the Suna QRF. Damn, Mama was always scary when she went all out. The desert never looked the same after your battles with her. A massive puff of smoke filled the area right in front of the ship. Alright, you lot, get your orders from Naruto. He moved to the next summoning seal while Naruto assigned them sectors. Within 10 minutes, Naruto had set up a total of 150 elite shinobi from Kumo, Kiri, Konoha and Suna. The Mizukage, Kazekage, Hokage and the guard details darted into the port area. There were around 50 of the original 75 shinobi still in pursuit. However, as the allied Kages passed the front line of defense, chaos rained down on the shinobi that were pursuing. As Gaara passed, the Naruto clone gave the order and the Earth users acted first by erecting a 400-foot wide earth bowl around the pursuers and the walls rose nearly 80 feet up. Next, the Kiri shinobi all used their most powerful water jutsu to hit the pursuers hard and drown them in condensed water. The Kumo contingent jumped up on the walls of the earth bowl and cast a variety of powerful lightning jutsu into the water. The resulting steam was ominous as it spread over the port, but that didn't stop the next part of the attack. The front of the earth bowl crumbled and a volley of fire and wind jutsu decimated the remaining earth bowl and the surviving shinobi. As the steam cleared, a victory shout rang out around the port. The first wave of enemies was dealt with, but that was just the preamble. Temari and Samui jumped next to the Naruto clone and got a quick hug from the clone that was in sage mode. It was Temari that took the lead as the Kage and leaders huddled around the clone after ordering their forces to secure the perimeter. Alright, Ruto, give us an update. Temari said in a deadly serious tone. Scenario 3, the clone started, which earned a gasp from Mei. We have roughly 5,000 incoming shinobi and an equal number of Zetsu. Itachi frowned, 10,000 against less than 200. The Naruto clone continued, our forces are 45 minutes out. We can apologize to Mifune later. I say we just decimate the area. Our foes are human, so we will unleash our strongest attacks from the start and hopefully cause them to pause in fear. May scowled. Naruto, their numbers will overwhelm us. We can buy some time, but against those numbers. Gaara stepped forward into the circle. It will be fine, Lady Mizukage. Temari and I will open the assault. Temari, I will kick up a sandstorm. I do not wish to sync with Shukaku until it is absolutely necessary. After I open, you hit them with a steam jutsu. Temari grimaced at the thought of killing that many people, but she nodded. Very well. Raza looked to the Naruto clone. Are you fighting with us? The clone stood up and shook its head in the negative. I will be maintaining the fallback barriers and countering Zetsu's underground transport technique. Give your men the battle plan and have them pair up in squads that can use combination jutsu. Fire uses with wind. Lightning uses with water. This whole plan is to overpower them with quality until our reinforcements arrive. May nodded. Very well. Darui, I will stagger my formations with yours. I will control the eastern edge and you get the western edge. Darui nodded lazily. Yup, the Raikage and Tsunade are fighting on the western edge. Once they finish their fights, I will have them sweep through and give us a breather. Raza nodded. Gaara and I will hold down the middle with Konoha. 5 minutes later, a horde of Amendewa shinobi halted a couple hundred feet in front of the formation of elite shinobi. Kitsuki had taken charge of the forces and he had ordered the halt. The ground shook as another explosion went off to the west and then the whole world went an orangish yellow as Naruto's scale powder jutsu went off. This stunned both sides and both sides were wiping their eyes in an effort to regain their vision. Once his vision cleared, Kitsuki shouted the charge order to his shinobi. Waves of earth rose up in front of the formation as 20 Iwa shinobi used a collaboration jutsu to erect the massive earthen wave. The Iwa forces charged behind the wave, but they weren't ready for the seas to rise up amidst a rumble of thunder as the whole port surged with electricity as the Kumo shinobi got their lightning jutsu ready. Torrents of water and lightning tore through the earth wave and slammed into a surprised enemy who wasn't ready for their collaboration jutsu to be dealt with so easily. As the earth wave crumbled, chaos ensued, but nobody was ready for what followed. As massive sandstorm came to life from the center of the port, and it rapidly spread to encompass nearly a square mile in front of the port. As Gaara sweat from the effort, Raza added his own gold dust and wind techniques. Finally, Temari had gathered her chakra and completed her dance as her fan glowed with a potent blue chakra. She lashed out and the winds of the sandstorm integrated with the steam wind and howls of pain echoed through the howling winds as the Iwa and Am forces learned to fear the power of Suna. Western Wolf Head Mountain. Naruto sensed the massive buildup of chakra at the port, and he felt the intense battle start. He cleared his mind and refocused on dealing with the remaining 4 paths of Pain and Conan. He dodged a volley of paper shuriken that coated the mountain, and he cursed as each shuriken began glowing and sizzling. Naruto coated himself in a dense earth dome as the paper shuriken bombs went off. His Mokuton ability was more than enough to handle the explosions, but he once again found himself on the defensive. After freeing himself from his earth dome, he dodged a volley of rockets that were followed shortly after by another gravitational push. To his consternation, the battle maintained this flow for the next 5 minutes. Every long-range jutsu he fought back with was absorbed by the Preta path and he knew that a regime change was needed in order to break the stalemate. He thought internally to Kurama and Chome, who both said that they were ready. Naruto's Golden Sage mode erupted in a wave of power as the combined yokai of Chome and Kurama took form over him. Naruto's normal orange cloak now had wings, a chitinous-looking helmet and he felt the power overflowing a bit more than usual. He tempered the overflowing yokai with more senjutsu chakra and the wavering chakra flames tempered themselves and settled into a hardened layer of yokai. Cool, Naruto thought before smirking devilishly, only one more thing to add. After thinking this, 9 tails hung down like streamers from his tailbone and they swayed contentedly behind Naruto's form. He launched himself into the air toward the one enemy that was isolated enough to take advantage of. His wings beat furiously as he soared towards Conan with his 9 chakra chain tails followed. He closed the distance in less than 3 seconds, which evidently surprised the airborne paper kunoiki enough to open her up for an attack. Conan had relegated herself to a support role since she knew that she would be less than useful in a close-range fight against Naruto. She had just launched a volley of explosive paper shuriken and she was molding her next attack when she felt a massive surge of power. She looked down to see a truly terrifying sight as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki somehow sprouted wings and tails and was flying toward her at an astounding speed. She ordered her paper bird to dive, but she knew it wasn't going to be enough. She began separating her body into sheets of paper as Naruto sent 2 chakra chains towards her. Naruto was fighting against an internal dilemma. He didn't want to kill Conan, and if he used any of his wind techniques, he would undoubtedly kill Conan, who had just separated into sheets of paper. Thinking quickly, Naruto halted his forward momentum and ordered his chains to form a barrier. The Diva Path roared out and aimed both palms toward the newly emerged, airborne dome of chakra chains and let loose a full-powered, Shinra Tensei. The chains didn't even ripple when the gravitational force slammed into it, which caused the Preta Path to be thrown by the Asura Path. Inside the chain barrier, Conan found it impossible to stay separated in the paper sheets. She reformed and saw that she was trapped by the Mokuton chains that had wrapped around her wrists and ankles, and her chakra was draining quickly within the barrier. She looked at the boy who was glowing with power and she was surprised to see a sad look on his face. She instinctively edged her head in a questioning manner. Naruto offered a weak smile. Conan, I do not wish to kill you. You are a good woman who has chosen to believe in her friend and follow his dream. Naruto unsealed a kunai and rapidly closed the distance to the immobilized kunoiki. He tucked the 3-pronged kunai into her Akatsuki cloak. Be careful after this. That Uchiha will get desperate. Call me if you need me. Conan offered an understanding smile as she felt herself slipping into chakra exhaustion and her eyes were half-lidded. Thank you, Naruto. She whispered tiredly before her eyes closed and the black kanji spread across her form. The Preta Path slammed into the barrier of chakra chains and began absorbing the chakra rapidly. The barrier cracked and broke to show Conan being held by the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. From his throne, Pain roared out and focused his power to the Preta Path. Naruto was surprised when his chakra started draining rapidly and his chains were dissolved, which caused Conan to begin plummeting to the ground. The Preta Path, having absorbed what kept it airborne, also began descending to the ground in an uncontrolled manner. Naruto panted from the chakra drain as his wings nearly flickered out of existence, but Chome was able to push more chakra out and stabilize them in time. The Diva Path once again held out both hands and pulled the Preta Path and Conan to him. The two figures were pulled rapidly in his direction as the human and Asura paths were watching the Jinchuriki. The Asura path formed rockets that sailed through the air in trails of smoke towards Naruto, who dodged them easily as he hovered in midair. How do I deal with them without killing Conan now? Naruto thought. Kurama frowned as he remained in a seated meditative position within the mindscape. I don't know, Ruto. No wide-scale jutsu, so I guess that leaves taijutsu. Naruto groaned. Taijutsu against a guy that controls gravity. Chome chitted in excitement. You can do it, Ruto. It was Kurama's turn to groan. You have turned my sister into a fan biju, ow. Kurama growled as he rubbed the back of his head from Chome's tail strike. Stupid big brother. You deserved that. I am not a fan biju, I am just trying to motivate our vessel. Chome chitted agitatedly. Naruto tuned out the biju's argument and he dove down toward the paths. A boom was heard as he broke the sound barrier in a surprising display of acceleration. Naruto crashed into the mountain in between the paths in an explosion of earth and wind. This sent the paths flying in opposite directions and he turned and caught Conan. He tried to cushion the blow, but the unconscious woman grunted at the impact and change of momentum when Naruto took off away from the paths of pain that were getting back to their feet. Naruto flew toward the western mountain and landed ungracefully, which forced him to slide on the snow to regain his footing. Naruto created a wood clone as he was sliding, and the wood clone took Conan's limp form in time for it to escape the explosion that rocked the western mountain. Naruto was flung further down the mountain from the explosion caused by the Asura path and then he felt an abrupt change in momentum as he was pulled towards the Diva path. He righted himself in air and saw that the Preta path was waiting for him with both hands out in a position that told Naruto it was about to catch him in a bear hug. Naruto scoffed and sent 9 Mokuton chains at the Preta path as he was merely 20 feet away. The Diva path's eyes widened in panic as it released the universal pull that it used on Naruto and immediately cast the universal push. Naruto grunted in pain as the abrupt change in momentum rocked his body and skull, but his attack paid off. The Preta path was pulled along as it was impaled by 5 Mokuton chakra chains, and the two forms went sailing back into the western Wolf Head Mountain, which was nearly destroyed by this point in time. The Preta path felt a chakra-draining battle taking place as the draining effects of the Mokuton chains fought against the Rinnegan's abilities to absorb chakra. The Preta path was slowly winning out, but then it slammed into the western mountain. Unlike Naruto, who was reinforced by Senjutsu chakra and copious amounts of yokai, the Preta path slammed into the mountain in a crunch of bone and chakra rods. Pain once again yelled in frustration as the link to yet another of his paths was severed. Pain let out a roar of frustration through the Diva path as it was one of 3 surviving paths. The human path was practically useless and the Asura path had been less than effective. As he was lost in his frustrating thoughts, he barely registered the winged dragon that was sailing towards the remaining paths. That being said, he did notice, and he raised a hand for yet another time and used the power of the Rinnegan to push it away with a wave of gravitational force. Apparently, that was according to Naruto's plan, because as the wind dragon was forcibly dispelled, the ground under the 3 paths began shaking. A dragon's maw, formed from Mokuton, rose up from under the 3 paths. Diva jumped up and used its control over gravity to float above the attack. The Asura path used rockets to propel it out of range of the massive dragon's maw. However, the human path was left trapped and alone as the teeth made of wood shredded the corpse that housed the human path. Naruto panted and let the yokai cloak fade from around him as his chakra coils burned from overuse. The combined yokai cloak was intense and it put an unfamiliar strain on his chakra coils, so he decided to take the rest of the fight without it. He rebalanced the Senjutsu chakra and he was able to sense the Diva and Asura paths hovering in the air over the middle Wolf Mountain. Well, sadly, it wasn't much of a mountain now. It was more a pile of rubble that served to prove an intense battle had taken place. Partner, Obito is watching from the eastern mountain. I can sense that foul chakra from his Sharingan, stupid bastard. Kurama warned. Chome stomped her legs in agitation since she no longer needed to funnel her yokai to Naruto. Only 2 more, Ruto. Give your chakra coils a rest and let the Senjutsu heal them before we can ignite them once more. Chome added in a positive tone. Gotcha, Cho and Q. I think I will let the Uchiha team know that he shouldn't be standing so close. Q. Handle the wind. I will bring the water. Naruto said with a smirk in his mind. Kurama chuckled, finally bringing this out, eh? Naruto nodded externally and closed his eyes to focus. He pulled on the water that was locked in fixed granules of snow and ice. This pulled massive amounts of snow and ice to bend to his will as Kurama focused the wind chakra internally and spread Naruto's chakra through the air. Naruto's eyes snapped open after he went through the hand signs for a water dragon, except a couple of the sign were changed. After weaving the last sign, he clapped his hands together, which caused the ice to race towards his as if he was a magnet in a room filled with iron shavings. Combination Jutsu, Divine Ice Dragon. Naruto roared as a dragon that was over 1,000 feet long and 250 feet wide rose up from the western mountain and let out a roar that echoed around Iron Country. The dragon swayed its tail as if using it to propel itself as it raced towards the airborne Diva and Asura paths. The gravitational force and rockets of the two proved insufficient to disrupt the massive dragon that continued its destructive journey towards them. The two disappeared among the chaos of ice and wind shards as the ice dragon tore through the rubble pile that used to be the center mountain and crashed into the eastern mountain. Naruto knew that Obito could simply phase out, but it was still a sufficient warning to the bastard Uchiha. Obito had been watching the fight from his mount on the eastern wolf head. He had been impressed by the Kyuubi Jinchuriki's prowess and supremely disappointed by the lackluster performance of a fake god. He admittedly missed half the battle due to the blinding jutsu that was used. He had recently regained his vision after spending a couple minutes in his pocket dimension and using his chakra to heal his eyes. When he returned, he noticed that 3 of the 6 paths were defeated, as well as Conan. He knew the inevitable outcome of this mission, but he wanted to see if Pain was able to weaken the Kyuubi Jinchuriki enough for him to swoop in and finish the fight. To his amazement, he watched the human path get swallowed by an earthen dragon that reminded Obito of the memories that Madara had shared with him. His jaw then fell when the biggest ice dragon he had ever seen rose up out of the western mountain, swallowed the 2 remaining paths of pain and then swerved towards him. He had enough time to phase back into his pocket dimension, but when he returned 30 seconds later, he wasn't ready for the 200-foot plummet. As he landed hard, his Sharingan showed him the destroyed mountain and the devastation caused by the ice dragon. All 3 mountains were now piles of ice and rubble. What were once admittedly beautiful forces of nature were now broken down into their base components, lacking their majestic form. He forced himself to refocus on the ongoing battle and he looked around for the orange hair that he had come to know as the Diva Path of Pain. Through the chakra, dust and ice that lingered in the air, he was unable to detect the final path of pain. That all changed when he felt a pull on his form, and he immediately phased into his pocket dimension and kept his senses in the real world. Pain had sacrificed his Asura path to preserve the Diva path from the ice dragon. The Asura path blew open a hole in the roaring tempest of ice and wind before it threw the Diva path upward into the sky. The Diva path hovered over the mountain range and looked down with a look of sheer rage on its face as the ice dragon plowed through the eastern mountain and crashed into the landscape below. He felt the link to the Asura path get severed and he let out his loudest roar of pain and frustration as he focused as much chakra as he could into his Diva path. The Diva path formed a super dense black orb in its right hand before releasing it into the air and fleeing the area. Not even the Kyuubi Jinchuriki would be able to resist the greatest jutsu of God that was strong enough to create the moon. Nagato watched through Yahiko's eyes as all of the loose rubble, ice and chunks of mountain were pulled toward the Chibaku Tensei that he released. His Rinnegan located the glowing form of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and saw that wood chakra chains were anchoring him to the western mountain. He roared and poured more chakra into the black hole that he had created. Naruto yelped in surprise as his chain anchors caused the base of the western mountain to be ripped up and towards the one jutsu that nearly ended him last time around. Rather than panic, he closed his eyes and focused on merging his chakra with Kurama. No offense to Chome, but he needed Kurama's form to resist this jutsu. A magnificent golden fox formed on top of the massive chunk of earth that was soaring into the air towards the black hole. The golden fox formed a Bijudama, Biju bomb, on the front of its snout and sent the bomb towards the Earth formation that was hovering in the sky. A massive explosion boomed in the sky over the mountains, but it wasn't enough to disrupt the most powerful jutsu of the Rinnegan. Naruto and Kurama changed strategies and wooden armor appeared on the ethereal golden form of Kurama. Mokuton encased chakra tails tore through every clump of earth that was gathering over the black hole. 3 mountains worth of rubble were torn asunder by the Mokuton tails, which exposed the chakra core of the jutsu. The golden fox snarled as it was near the core before all 9 chakra tails assaulted the chakra core at once. In an explosion of chakra, Naruto and the fox form of Kurama were sent hurtling towards the ground as the destabilized black hole exploded with world-shattering force. The massive golden fox slammed into the ground as earth and ice showered down upon it. The Biju transformation absorbed the worst of the explosion and impact for Naruto, but it caused the form to destabilize, which left Naruto huffing and puffing on one knee as earth and ice continued to rain down from the sky. Pain was infuriated to the point that he ignored his own exhaustion as he watched the Kyuubi Jinchuriki escape his most powerful jutsu. The Diva path fell out of the air as it no longer had enough chakra to hover in the sky. Pain coughed out a lungful of blood as the link to Yahiko was temporarily severed. The body of Yahiko crashed into the ground from his perch in the sky before it was covered in a layer of ice and dust. Naruto regained his composure after 30 seconds and he attempted to calm his senses and burning chakra coils. He took deep breaths and tuned out the overwhelming amounts of chakra that were hovering in the air. He maintained his golden form and shook his head as he thought, no wonder the sage could fight for days on end. This power is amazing. Focus Naruto. Kurama roared through the mental link, which snapped the blonde knucklehead back to his task. Hey, Q, is it just me or is the link to the Diva path weak? Naruto thought as he sensed the chakra connection to Yahiko. Kurama's scowl faded and a contemplative look took over his face. Spread your senses and find Nagato. I no longer sense the Uchiha. Naruto forced the panic rising back down and focused on tracing the chakra link back to Nagato's position. As he found him, his eyes widened in horror as he felt Obito's presence near Nagato. In a flash of gold, Naruto dashed towards Nagato's position while praying that he would make it in time. Battle of the Port, Part 2. As Gaara's magnificent sandstorm died down and Temari's steam wind had evaporated, there was a momentary lull in the battle. Silence hung over the battlefield save for the flickering of many small fires that dotted the sundered landscape. As the air cleared of the sand and debris, the Allied forces saw hundreds of earth domes and other defensive techniques. It was clear that they were fighting a skilled shinobi force rather than simply exterminating a large force of bandits. The earth domes began to crumble down and showed that over half of the shinobi force survived the intense combo attack of the Subaku family. The forces glared at each other momentarily before the intense fight began once more. The air was filled with battle cries, jutsus of all shapes, sizes and natures, screams of pain and death moans. The intense fight went on for 15 minutes when everyone was once again forced to stop and gape as a majestic ice dragon roared to life over the remains of 3 landmarks. The momentary disruption didn't last long as the screams of an intense battle filled the air once more. Temari was ideal in a battle position such as the one she was in. She was at the front of the vanguard, and she was free to unleash the mayhem of wind and steam in 180 degrees in front of her. Her flanks were protected by her brother and father, and her other brother was controlling his puppets to deal with any of the S that managed to close the distance. She let out 3 more funnels filled with the chaos of wind and steam that rose into twisters and tore into a group of ninja that were assaulting the eastern flank. Samui was paired with some mist shinobi on the western flank, and she felt Tsunde's presence join the battle. She wasn't a particularly gifted sensor or anything, she just couldn't mistake the trademark fishes and rumble from her monstrous strength for anything other than her mama. She had opened with some of her strongest lightning jutsu, lightning style, electromagnetic murder, combined with a joint jutsu from the mist shinobi led by Zabuza. The water-style water colliding wave soared over the Allied formation before forming into a wave that was 40 feet tall and 300 feet wide. The wave that crackled with electricity crashed into an enemy formation of over 100 shinobi, and the earth barriers they used to defend themselves did little to temper the impact of the collaboration jutsu. After the opening attack, Samui joined a charge alongside the swordsmen and women of Kumo and Kiri. They were ordered to perform a quick attack and retreat sequence. Samui was able to sever 2 heads from necks before the retreat was ordered. She let out an impressed whistle in her head when a wall of flames erupted over the western flank to cover the retreat. After reforming, Samui looked out and saw that there were still hundreds if not thousands of enemies on the western flank. As she was regaining her bearings, she saw another fissure tear through the lands in front of the port. She watched Tsunde jump high into the air before summoning a massive fragment of Katsuyu that let out a monstrous cloud of acid upon the enemy formation. The massive slug ate earth and water jutsu to the sides and head before retreating to the summoning realm. Tsunde had jumped from her perch on Katsuyu's head and glowed a vibrant blue as she plummeted to the ground glowing with chakra. Her axe kick caused a fissure that was several hundred feet deep and nearly 800 feet wide to appear in front of the western flank. Tsunde landed next to Samui while breathing hard. Her sage mode faded, and she took a knee next to Samui. Hinata. Samui yelled, and moments later Hinata was already caring for Tsunde. Hinata looked up after analyzing Tsunde. I am taking her back to the ship. She is bordering chakra exhaustion and it is putting strain on the baby. Naruto's clone will be able to give her a chakra boost. Samui nodded before turning back to the battlefield as hordes of white Zetsu began appearing on their side of the crater. She heard Darui order a close-in formations to prevent the Zetsu from being able to imitate allies. She sensed Hinata disappear to the ship with Tsunde and whispered a prayer to Kami for the health of the child. She returned her full attention to the fight against the horde of white Zetsu. Ino was grouped with a Yamanaka team that was part of the quick reaction force. After Gaara's storm, the battle on the eastern flank resumed with terrifying intensity. Their role in such a wide-scale battle was simple: disorient and distract. The mind jutsu from the Yamanaka were truly terrifying in such a scenario. She watched her father go slack as he took control of a commander in the enemy's ranks. It was the general of Iwa's explosion corps, and she marveled at her father's ability to rapidly understand and use his enemy's own jutsu. Multiple explosions occurred around the general before he began glowing a brilliant white and detonating in a chaotic explosion that sent a mushroom cloud hundreds of feet into the sky. Ino focused on using Yamanaka style, mind destruction, and Yamanaka style, sensory deprivation, jutsus. When her jutsu landed, groups of shinobi would fall over in drooling heaps or stumble around flailing wildly. Ino knew that this was the most she could do for the allied forces and that any hand-to-hand combat would lead to unnecessary casualties. She refocused and took control of a big man from Iwa, who suddenly turned around and charged into his own ranks. Itachi had taken command of the fire users and wind users that were partnered together for this defensive operation. He marveled at the potential of the two being used in tandem as firestorms rained down on their enemy position. He hated the pointless loss of life, the screams of agony, the smell of burning flesh and ash. He wanted a peaceful world, and he lamented the fact that one must fight for peace. One must commit atrocious acts to ensure that said acts were not committed against the ones he loved. He watched Shisui launch a fire dragon that was empowered by Masori's wind jutsu. The dragon grew to 3 times its normal size and tore through 3 earth walls before exploding in a ball of fire amidst the enemy formation. Things were going well, but the allied forces were using far too much ninjutsu for this to be a sustainable battle strategy. His Sharingan caught a blur of blue that tore through enemy formations almost faster than his Sharingan could track before the blur jumped into the air and landed in the back of the enemy formation. The explosion of earth and lightning that poured out of the crater was accompanied by screams of confusion from the enemy formation. I had finished his intense fight with Kisame Hoshigaki. It took him longer than he thought to deal with the man that was hailed to have as much chakra as a Biju. While the fight dragged on, I found himself disappointed by the fight. It was clear that the missing ninja from the mist had grown accustomed to fighting with Samehada. The look of surprise on his face's eyes, lightning style, lightning strike, tore through his chest told I that the monster of the mist didn't expect the jutsu to go right through his sword. Oh well, I was victorious and he was able to rejoin the battle and back up his allies now. I decided to take the long way around when it came to this battle. After dealing with Kisame on the western flank, he tore a blue, lightning-covered streak through the enemy formation all the way to the eastern edge. His body was his weapon and the potent lightning chakra evaporated the blood before it could even taint his form. He dashed through another group of unsuspecting shinobi before he launched himself into the air. He crashed down among the back ranks and took out an important-looking commander from Am. Realizing he had overextended a bit, he dashed back towards his allies while dispatching every enemy in his way. Itachi gave the Raikage a deadpan look as the hulk of a man came to rest next to him. Itachi was surprised to see that the Raikage was already huffing and puffing, but he figured an S-ranked battle and a trip through hundreds of enemies would do that to a man. He coughed to get the Raikage's attention and aired an eyebrow at the man. I recognized the gesture and decided to give a brief report. I took out Kisame and decided to sow some discord before rejoining our forces. How are things here? Itachi frowned slightly. We are holding them at bay, but we are expending chakra far too fast for this to be sustainable. As Itachi said that thousands of white Zetsu rose from the grounds 300 feet away from the front of the allied formation. And now we have them to deal with as well. I growled, I need a moment to recharge. He said to Itachi before he rose his voice and bellowed, close ranks. The allied formation fell back slightly and tightened up their formation. Flame contingent, Itachi yelled, which prompted the fire and wind users to prepare. The white Zetsu horde charged recklessly. They were a distraction meant to wear out the enemy. There were less than 2 of the enemy and thousands of allies remaining. Sure, the enemy consisted of the most elite ninja of each village, but that only made it worth the sacrifice. The Zetsu charged, each one only as strong as a Chunin, but they charged as one. They had the power to absorb chakra by direct contact and they were fairly resilient. As they were 100 feet out, a flame tornado nearly 500 feet wide tore through the center of the charge. The Zetsu were made of nature cells and their weakness was fire. The horde didn't stand a chance as Temari used her link to the tornado to have it move toward the eastern flank. On the eastern flank, the initial charge was halted by dragons of water and lightning. The temporary stall in the charge caused them to fall prey to the flames of the tornado and it cost the Zetsu army nearly a third of its members. On the western flank, Darui let out a full-powered, storm-style, laser circus which tore through many of the Zetsu. As he was recovering, Zabuza stepped up and led the ninja from the mist to conjure another massive, water-colliding wave. As the water settled among the charging Zetsu, they were barbecued by a high-voltage electric current. Samui led the charge to clean up the closer survivors before quickly retreating back to the defensive lines. This was the battle plan that Darui developed, and it had proved effective thus far. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.